Welcome to Studio Stories. My name is Nick Constantino. I'm here to talk about sports, marketing, and media. It's a pretty easy, good time to be talking about sports. Obviously, the state of the world has drastically changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but just this past weekend, we welcomed back sport. Major League Baseball, they kicked off their 2020 shortened season, and needless to say, there was quite the response across all sorts of media, across all sorts of marketing. People were in. It was quite a spectacle to behold. The Braves didn't win that first one, which is okay. They got the next two, but it is quite the time right now. If you look across the board, ratings were up to the highest they've ever been for television, for radio, and I think people really needed to have sport back. Nelson Mandela said it a long time ago that sport can create hope where there was only despair, and is more powerful than government in breaking down racial barriers. I think that's really important. I think that one of the few things that can unify races, creeds, colors, I think on a business standpoint, it's the only time an intern can talk to a CEO, and I think it was something desperately needed. I'll say it now, I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up next to Shea Stadium in Flushing as a Mets fan. I now work in theory, for the Atlanta Braves. Talk about not an easy thing to palate. I've been within 8 inches of Chipper Jones working an event. There was a flash before my eyes of, you're still a Mets fan, you're still a Mets fan, you're still a Mets fan. But the Braves are, we are in it is an interesting time to be in sport and to be around the Braves and everything around it. We manage the Braves Radio Network, which is the largest in sports. So I get kind of a local and a regional feel of the importance of sports has on business community, advertisers, marketing. So again, it's truly been an interesting time, but one I think that is important moving forward. You see it across all things. Again, you got a team of people with, an Acuna who doesn't speak really good English. You got a 40-year-old catcher. You got pitchers. You got people who've overcome adversity, people from all backgrounds that are playing together on a field. And once they're on there, that's what matters and that's what's important. You see it in the NBA. You see a bunch of guys, they were willing to play in a bubble, putting themselves on the line just to end the season the right way. So again, I think the sports world is primed. I think there's challenges, but I also think that there's a ton of opportunity. From the marketing landscape, sports media is more important than ever. With so many on-demand services, it's pretty much driving traditional TV. Your ESPNs, your Fox Sports, your NBC, those guys exist and their revenues are there because of live sports. No one's going to watch on demand, not the Super Bowl, not an NBA game, not the first baseball game, because social media has actually destroyed that for us, because somebody's going to post a score, and no matter what you do, you're going to see that score. I think that's been proven time and time again. So it's also really important to the traditional media landscape. You've also seen a pretty big push into digital with Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, all trying to get in on the action. These rights contracts are going to be negotiated differently because of that. So who's going to get access to the Braves? The Braves are a great example. The Braves games are aired on Fox Sports South, but Liberty Media, who owns the Braves, is one of the biggest media conglomerates in the world. Where is that going to end? Are they going to make it an on-demand service where you can pay per game? Are they going to buy the TV network? Who knows? But as we go in, those things are going to become more disruptive, and the web's going to play a bigger version on that. Traditional radio, at its core, we're a radio station. And the one thing I tell people is right now, radio is the least impacted broadcast. And I say that because watching a baseball game with nobody in the stands is weird. As much as it was funny to see Chipper Jones and his kid at Citi Field, wasn't particularly fond of it, but it happened. It's very different listening to a radio broadcast because your brain, the theater of the mind, creates associations and creates things that might not be there. Everyone's interpretation is different. It's also the most pure and direct feed and the most like what it was previously. There's also just something about radio. They always say that baseball was built for radio. The NBA and NFL were built for TV. And if you look now, the MLS and the popularity is pretty much a web-based viewership and consumption pattern. So I think baseball lends itself really well to radio. And I think especially in Atlanta, the Braves are part of this city. They're part of what we do, and they're part of what can bring people together. Again, tumultuous times. Atlanta's got a history of civil rights and issues that are very hard and challenging to talk about for anybody. And I think sports is something that we were missing that brings all those people together. So it's very important to have it, but it's also, there's more to it. There's more to media, there's more to marketing, there's more to the world than just sports. So as long as it keeps its place and we know what it is as a source of entertainment and as a source of escape, I think it's incredibly powerful and will continue to be so. I think that you're going to see some problems with valuations with the teams and things like that. I think you're seeing revenue dip as much as they're going to without in-stadium is going to be a thing. I also think trends are going to change. I think you're going to continue to see people going away from in-stadium more to watching at home. I've had 4 or 5 different massive companies, Fortune 500 companies, tell me the first thing that they're reevaluating is buying tickets to games. I think you're at a point where every company, every corporation has just got inundated with tickets to games, so much money is being spent on it that it's not a unique experience anymore. Anybody can be asked by any different companies to be at a game, and it's almost losing the feel of being at a game because it's lost the connection of I'm going with my kid, I'm going with my wife, and it's almost always a business thing, which I think, to be honest with you, we're going to see a trend away from, and I think that's going to see a pretty substantial impact on the valuation of the teams. Another interesting thing that has come about because of the pandemic, people have seen this all over the place, from food supplies to relations with China to globalism. Everything's coming in tight. If you look at it, there was a point where Idaho had more potatoes going to waste than ever before, but you couldn't go out and get frozen French fries. It just showed how broken the supply chains are and how much we focus on international, interstate logistics. And I believe that's going to change. I believe that your community is going to become more important. You cannot be out. You cannot be traveling as much. The nuclear community in which you are around has become more important and more impactful. And I think that that's the trend that's going to follow in media. I think, the days of companies just running national campaigns are going to be slowly start to go away, and you're going to see more regional and especially local. Atlanta has got a characteristic all its own. You're in the media, you're in music, you see all these things coming through Atlanta. Just in the 6 years that I've been down here, the change has been amazing. The business that has been following it, it needs an identity. They can't be running Atlanta ads out of New York and DC because they don't know what's going on here. You could compare LA and the film industry, but let me promise you, LA is nothing like Atlanta, and Atlanta is nothing like LA. So I think you're going to see things become hyper local, even to the advertising, even to the community effect. And I think that's going to be a good thing for marketing, but there's tons of challenges. There's a lot of agencies that run out of bigger markets. So if all of a sudden now you're a company in Atlanta and your agency is out of New York, one, they're still not going to work in New York. They don't have the government open. They don't have things open the same way. So I think, again, it's going to become hyper-local. I also believe I am a radio guy from the beginning of my career. I've been involved in radio. Unfortunately, radio led, like a lot of other industries, where the small stations and the local ownership was just gobbled up. You have 3 or 4 mega conglomerates, completely consolidated, and it has been to the detriment of local radio. When you talk about local, when you talk about families and business and communities, radio used to be the greatest medium to reach them. You were only talking about Atlanta. 680 The Fan exists because ESPN and national companies, they talk about the national broadcasters, they talk about the Knicks, they talk about the NBA, they talk about the NFL. They don't talk about the University of Georgia football. And I'll give you guys an example. It was 3 years ago, we'd set up an SEC championship tailgate. Big party, unbelievable, quarter mile from the stadium. As the official talk station of Georgia, we have the capability, we have the listeners to do it. Something had come up. I had to run back to New York for the night. For the SEC championship, while that tailgate was going on, I was in New York. I was in Long Island in a town called Huntington. Party town. Anyone's heard of it? They know what I'm talking about. You'll hear the stories of Little V's Pizza, where literally I've seen a man jump across the counter with a piece of pizza in his hand and punch somebody in the face with it because it wasn't ready in time. One of those places. You can look that up on Thrillist. There's a whole story about it. But I was at a bar, and there were 3 people watching the SEC championship in that day. In Georgia, the city shuts down. It is an SEC championship, and this is when they played Alabama. That was it. That was the greatest day in existence. That was people were there. It's completely different. So how are you having marketing, media decisions made out of a city that has that much disconnect from what's important to people here? So radio actually, again, was really, really, really good at reaching local people. The personalities were in the market. They were talking about what's relevant to you. They had spins. They've been there for a long time. We have one show, almost 5,000 episodes, that those two guys have been together talking sports. So they've been through it all. They've seen it all. But most importantly, they're connected with the community. You're seeing that go bye-bye in almost everything. Take it to the local news. Do you remember how important the local news was? Do you remember how important it was to watch the 6 a.m. news? Who watches the news anymore? I haven't turned on the news. So as we get more local, I hope there's more opportunities for companies like that to exist. I hope even digital follows its way locally, where there are more local agencies that are running this stuff. So it's more pertinent. It's more built for you and for what you like and what you need. And it can't just be traffic. We know traffic sucks here, not the past couple of months, but we know traffic sucks here. That's not enough. Look, we know it's going to be 90 degrees. It's July. We get it. That's not what I need. I need, what's going on with Keisha and Kemp suing each other, and really, are they friends? Are they frenemies? What's going on here? That's the kind of stuff that's important, because that affects how business is done, but also how relationships are made and how commerce is conducted. So I think we're going to see that localization, and we're going to see things kind of coming much, 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 much more insular and in. And I'm excited for it, and I think it's the cycle, and I think something like radio and some well-positioned local companies are going to have a really good chance to grow and a really good chance to diversify what they do. And I think it's for the better of all. Supply chains and things like that, where we have business, where food comes from, where stuff, it's not as easy to change habits, but you're going to have to see it, because we can't be having things. We can't have food shortages happening as we go. I mean, if I can't get my steak and French fries, that's a bad Friday night. I don't care how anyone says it. So I think there's a lot of other things that will change because of the pandemic, and hopefully, as we get closer, also we get in more touch with each other's feelings and what affects the community. If you're watching national news and bigger picture things, it's really easy to forget that what your neighbors are going on, and how maybe you're in Roswell, Alpharetta, but you don't know exactly what's going on in Bankhead and College Park. So I think that the closer we get, the better it is for everything. So one of the unique things about 680 The Fan, Dickey Broadcasting, Braves Network, all of the different tentacles of what we do, is we are one of the last local media companies of our scale left in the country. I know that's hard to believe, but any radio station you listen to, any TV station you watch, they're all part of much bigger corporations now. So being local affords us a couple of different things. One, we're able to be dynamic. We're able to pivot quicker. We're able to come up with ideas better. We're able to really understand the fundamentals of our business. We've also built relationships. So as of today, we are the flagship of the Atlanta Braves, the flagship of Georgia Tech, the official talk station of the Georgia Bulldogs. We're the official partner of the Georgia Track Club, the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Shaquille O'Neal records his podcast in our studios with one of our on-air talent, with John Kincaid. If you combine all those things, it's given us access to things that most companies of our size would never have access to. And the big difference is that for us, those are all personal relationships. So when I'm out with a Braves employee, we treat each other as colleagues. There's always a little competition, but there's competition among my own salespeople. So it gives it a truly unique way to hyper serve and super serve the clients that want to be a part of it. We don't get into the dollar amount, but I'm sure every business around understands how expensive it is to be an official Atlanta Braves or Georgia Tech partner. You're talking substantial six-figure deals that a lot of businesses will never have and don't have the potential to believe they'll have. So we fill a nice gap where we have access to those things. You can build association with them for that. We also have, it's a unique, close bunch of small business owners that we reach. Again, it's a dead art. It's not easy to reach business owners now. It's not easy to reach companies of that scale and decision makers. So we reach the right audience. It's really a matter of, my job on a day is to listen to a client, find out what their needs are, and then find a way to organically integrate them into the sports conversation, right? Is that a sponsorship? Is that something where they're sponsoring the weather report before tailgate? Always differences based on needs, but what it creates is it creates an opportunity for a client to be part of the sports conversation. And as you look at influencing and how people get customers, if your business can feel like they're a part of that person's day-to-day and what they like, their propensity to buy always increases. So as a quick example, this was probably March 16th. This was right as COVID-19 really started rearing its head in Atlanta. Businesses were being shut down. I went to my boss's office and I was like, we have to do something for business. We looked at each other, we had 2 conversations, and we decided that every single day of the week, in every single show, we were going to give a new business a 5-minute interview to talk about their business. They were going to talk about what struggles they've seen. They were also going to do a 3 to 5 minute infomercial to talk about what they sell, why they're different, why they should stand out. Reference point, a 3 to 5 minute interview is the most protected category on a radio station. Usually people tune out. People are here to hear about Georgia and Georgia Tech and the Braves. They're not here to hear someone talk about their business. But because of the situation we were in, what actually ended up happening was not only did listenership go up that week, but the demand we got and the number of people who called in. And against the grain, you think automatically sports, it's got to be a 45-year-old white guy. That was not the case. There was a Vietnamese bakery that called in. I couldn't fathom in my wildest dreams how this would happen. But they heard it on the station. They called in. Word spread that quickly. Now we are 4 months later, and we're sitting here and we found the local bank, Georgia Primary Bank, who's now the title sponsor of that segment and that feature, and they're using it to reward their own clients. So there was a problem, we added a solution, we found a business with a like mind that now owns a program. That cannot be said of most companies. They don't build things that way. Most media is hear your commercials. We can segue this into the digital world. Unfortunately, you look at stuff like programmatic buying, and while I understand efficiencies, I understand if you're real-time bidding, you're setting something up like the stock market. I understand them, and I understand why people would spend their money there. However, that connection is much harder to build by just treating someone as a data point. It's much harder to say, we're this efficient at reaching these people. Efficiency is different than effectiveness. And being effective and being efficient are, I think, a problem right now where everybody, and I get it again, we're in a tough time, money is tight. But if you're only worried about being efficient, you lose your effectiveness. Effectiveness is an emotional connection. You have to have an emotional connection. You have to get something to have people consider you versus your competitors. The only way you're going to do that is to create that emotional connection, to lead them through a sales funnel. And I think we've done a really good job of it, and I think that we have the resources to, and I think we will for the next couple of years. I have some experience also in the music industry. Before I was a sponsorship director for Live Nation. I was actually in Washington, D.C., 3 venues. I think music has a similar effect, is that, your band is your band. And when you see your band, your propensity to take in messages and like factors and things is really, really powerful. So I actually think music and sports are much similar than most people realize. The only problem with music is music does tend to divide a little. Personally, it's very hard for me to listen to country music when I'm down here, and it's very much played everywhere I go. But that's probably the Flushing, Queens, New Yorker in me that just didn't have grass, so it's hard to relate, I guess. But, the music industry is rough, man. You look at it now, you look at concerts being blacked out. At its core, someone like Live Nation was a data company. They had so many data points on listeners. Now they have a year of missing that. Think about how much fast data about people change and their habits that have changed. Without those touch points, they lose a lot of that. So, it's curious to see where music goes. I also think, honestly, as a very fond festival goer, there were too many darn festivals. I think we're going to consolidate. And as a music fan, the only thing I want to see on earth is go back to one guy with an acoustic guitar up on a stage. No digital production, no record label, just one guy up on a stage playing music, and I think we're going there. I think the trends are going to go there, and I think that connection is really, really, really going to be where we go. Again, making things more insular and closed off. The last piece of all this, and it's a similar thing, social media it's integrated everybody's lives. We're a part of it, whether it's LinkedIn for business, whether it's Instagram. There's a lot of negative connotation around it now. You've got a third of companies that say they're not going to spend on advertising anymore in the social media space. Why is that? What does it look like? Those are all things that are going to be really, really important. Ironically, social media, the first social media was old radio stations. It was a guy telling people what they liked in front of a bunch of other people, and they shared stories as opposed to images. I think there's a place for everything. I think social media is important. I'm not going to get into the gauging if it's been a positive or negative on society. I've seen many debates where you would never be able to connect with people that you thought you were, but two, everyone thinks they're a freaking news person and everyone thinks they can share stories, and then other people follow it, and you have a huge misinformation going in every direction, to both sides. I would argue that social media is not political because both sides offend equally. Both sides are as batshit crazy. It goes both ways. And unfortunately, the people that lose are the people in the middle that are just like, hey, maybe just be nice to each other. I don't know. That seems like a pretty good way to go about things. Okay, no more politics, I promise. But look, finally, I think that as we morph through this, as this calendar year ends, I think you're going to see, again, sports they're going to show how important they are. As people watch, get back to it, it's not going to be as quick as people thought. When habits change, they change for good, right? So when you stop watching sports, there are other things that fulfill that gap. Maybe it's not as important to you. Maybe the team is, but maybe opening day is not. Maybe watching on TV is not. Maybe going to games is not. But when it does come back and people realize that you're in September with NFL, college football, Kentucky Derby, golf, basketball, baseball, all playing at the same time, and just the plethora of what we have, I think we're going to have more time to celebrate it and more time to enjoy it. And I think media itself, while it'll follow similarly with sports, that people's habits will change, I don't think those habits necessarily are going to change long term, and I don't think they're going to change for the negative. I think that they probably exacerbated trends that were already happening and already going that way. And finally, the only thing I beg is that when you look at marketing, it's got to be a magical connection. If I was sitting here right now in the 50s, this would be Mad Men and there would be a storyboard up there. Just images of what they thought a commercial would look like. Those magical connections, whether it was Volkswagen, when they were trying to sell Beetles in the United States after World War II, and they took this little Beetle and they were putting giants inside of it just to stand out. There's no data points involved in that. That is coming up with an idea. I'm sure everybody here can close their eyes and think of an advertising campaign, a magazine ad, a radio, something that elicited emotional response. That's not a data point. So as we adjust and as we see programmatic and data play a part, all I ask is everybody, don't forget the magic. Because if that magic goes, we're all freaking computers. So again, this is Studio Stories. Thank you very much.